You think needing people is normal. You think it's human. You think the fact that you reach out, that you lean on someone, that you feel incomplete without certain people in your life, you think that makes you real, makes you relatable, makes you deep. It makes you controllable. The moment you need someone, you hand them a weapon. You don't see it. You never see it. You hand it to them wrapped in trust, in love, in loyalty, in vulnerability, and you call it connection. But what you've actually done is given another person the precise instrument they need to destroy you whenever they decide it's convenient. And the worst part? You're hiding it. You tell yourself you're independent. You post about discipline. You talk about your goals. But behind closed doors, behind the screen, in the silence of 3 a.m., you're waiting. You're waiting for a text. You're waiting for approval. You're waiting for someone to confirm that you're enough. That what you're doing matters. That you exist in a way that counts. That dependency is invisible to the world. But power can smell it. Once you see what I'm about to show you, you cannot go back to pretending. This isn't motivation. This isn't a speech designed to make you feel good for 48 hours before you slide back into the same patterns. This is a surgical dissection of the mechanism that has kept you beneath your potential your entire life. And the mechanism has a name. It's called needing people. Not loving people. Not choosing people. Needing them. There is a difference. And that difference is the entire distance between a man who is owned and a man who cannot be touched. Let's talk about the invisible enemy first. Because you need to understand what you're actually fighting before you can destroy it. Most people walk through their entire lives convinced that emotional need is a virtue. They're told it's healthy to open up. They're told vulnerability is strength. They're told that leaning on others is what separates emotionally evolved human beings from cold, closed-off people who end up alone and bitter. That is the narrative they feed you. And it serves a very specific purpose. It is not designed to liberate you. It is designed to keep you predictable. Think about what happens the moment someone knows what you need. The moment a business partner understands that you need their validation. The moment a woman knows you need her presence to feel stable. The moment a friend realizes that their approval regulates your self-worth. They don't have to chain you. You've already chained yourself. They just have to hold the key casually, barely even trying, and you will orbit them like a satellite that has forgotten it was once moving in its own direction. Weak men call this love. The average person calls this intimacy. What it actually is, strategically, psychologically, functionally, is leverage. Someone else's leverage over you. And they may never consciously use it. But the fact that it exists changes the entire dynamic of the relationship. The power always flows toward the person who needs less. Always. Without exception. This is not philosophy. This is the architecture of every human interaction that has ever occurred. The invisible enemy is not the people in your life. They're not villains. The invisible enemy is the unexamined belief that needing them makes you more connected to life. It doesn't. It makes you a variable in someone else's equation. And variables get solved for. Variables get used. Variables get discarded when the equation changes. You were never meant to be a variable. 500 years ago, a man named Niccolo Machiavelli watched rulers rise and collapse. He watched men with armies, wealth, and intelligence lose everything in a matter of months. And he noticed a pattern that no one else wanted to articulate because it was too uncomfortable, too ruthless, too honest for polite conversation. The ones who fell because they needed something. They needed loyalty from men who had no reason to stay loyal once the reward structure shifted. They needed love from people who had been positioned to benefit from love's performance. They needed allies who needed them equally in return. A mutual dependency that looked like partnership but was actually two people holding guns at each other's heads and calling it trust. Machiavelli didn't say don't form alliances. He said understand exactly what an alliance is. It is a transaction between two self-interested parties that continues precisely as long as it remains mutually beneficial and not 1 second longer. The prince who understood this survived. The prince who believed his alliances were based on genuine devotion. He was the one who woke up one morning to find his court empty and his enemies at the gate. History has never rewarded need. History rewards calculation. History rewards men who loved with their eyes open and strategized with their emotions off the table. You are living in a moment that requires you to understand what Machiavelli understood. Not because the world is evil, but because the world is indifferent. And indifference does not yield to need. It yields only to power. Here is what you become when you purge this weakness entirely. You become impossible to manipulate. Not because you become cold, but because there is nothing to grip. There is no lever anyone can pull to move you. The person who tries to withdraw attention to punish you finds that you've already moved on. The person who tries to use your loneliness against you discovers you don't experience loneliness the way they thought you did. The person who tries to manufacture scarcity around themselves to increase their value in your life finds that you don't participate in that game. You become strategically superior. Because while everyone around you is making decisions from a place of emotional need, you are making decisions from a place of strategic clarity. You choose people. You don't need them. And choice is power. Choice means you can walk. And the moment you can genuinely walk, the entire dynamic of every relationship in your life shifts in your favor without you having to say a single word. You will never see people the same after this. You will watch interactions differently. You will notice who needs what. You will understand why certain people behave the way they do, because you'll see the need underneath it. You'll see the desperation dressed as confidence, the attachment performing as affection, the insecurity acting as control. And you will look at all of it with a clarity that most people never develop because they're too busy drowning in their own need to ever see the pattern clearly. After this, you cannot go back. This changes the lens permanently. Write that down. Number 1. Emotional need is not a private experience. It is a public signal. You believe that what you feel internally stays internal. You believe that you can need someone privately, that the hunger you feel for their presence, their approval, their attention, you believe it stays hidden behind a composed exterior. It doesn't. Need broadcasts. It has a frequency. It comes through in the way you respond too quickly, in the way your energy shifts when they enter or leave the room, in the way you volunteer information to make yourself relevant, in the way you tolerate behavior that a man operating from wholeness would never tolerate, in the way you monitor, in the way you interpret silences, in the way you adjust yourself to manage their perception of you. Every one of these behaviors is a signal. And every person around you, consciously or not, is reading it. Think about the last time you pursued someone who wasn't pursuing you equally. What did that do to the dynamic? The more you moved toward them, the more they were permitted to move away. Not because they were cruel. Because the architecture of attraction, of respect, of power, it flows away from need. Always. The moment you needed them more than they needed you, the value equation flipped. Most people respond to this by trying to need more strategically, by manufacturing indifference while still being internally consumed. That doesn't work. You cannot fake this. The signal still transmits because the need is still there. The power reframe is this: the work is not to perform independence. The work is to actually become independent at the level of identity. To reorganize your internal architecture so that your wholeness is not contingent on anyone's presence, approval, or continuation in your life. Stop trying to look like you don't need people. Actually stop needing them. Build the internal structure that makes you genuinely complete without external confirmation. That is the only version of this that broadcasts correctly. That is the only version that commands respect without asking for it. You are not performing sovereignty. You are becoming it. Comment: I move in silence. Number 2. The people you need the most are the ones with the most power to betray you. This is not cynicism. This is physics. You have heard stories of the most devastating betrayals in history: political, personal, professional. And in every single case, the person who betrayed held a position of trust. They were given access. They were given proximity. They were given the map of every vulnerability you possessed. Because you needed them, you opened the gate. Because you needed them, you showed them where the walls were thin. You don't get betrayed by strangers. You get betrayed by the people you trusted with your need. The average person responds to betrayal by choosing better people next time. They audit their social circle. They become more selective. What they don't do is audit the mechanism that creates the vulnerability in the first place. The mechanism is need. The mechanism is the part of you that requires another person's loyalty so intensely that you compromise your own strategic positioning to secure it. Think about the relationship where you gave the most, emotionally, energetically, in terms of access, and then think about where that relationship is now. Think about what they knew about you. Think about what knowing that cost you when things shifted. The power reframe is this: you do not eliminate closeness from your life. You eliminate unstrategic exposure. You decide consciously what you reveal and to whom and when and why. Not from paranoia. From architecture. You build your relationships the way a fortress is built, with intention, with structure, with a clear understanding of where the entrances are and who has the access codes. Closeness is permitted. Dependency is not. Choose people from fullness. Give from surplus. Never from need. Burn this into your mind. Number 3. Social approval is the most sophisticated cage ever constructed. You were conditioned from the first years of your life to need approval. You were rewarded when people around you were pleased and punished, emotionally, socially, sometimes physically, when they were not. By the time you were old enough to form a conscious identity, the wiring was already complete. The need for approval was not a choice. It was an installation. And the machine that benefits from your approval need has been running ever since. When you need social approval, you self-censor. You do not say what you actually think because you are calculating, in real time, how it will be received. You do not make the moves you know are correct because you are monitoring for external permission. You do not become who you are capable of becoming because who you are capable of becoming has not yet been validated by the people around you, and the part of you that still needs them won't move without the green light. The average person spends their entire life waiting for that green light. They call it humility. They call it being realistic. They call it not being arrogant. What it actually is paralysis dressed in the language of virtue. You have had ideas you did not execute because you feared the reaction. You have had positions you did not hold because they were inconvenient socially. You have made yourself smaller in rooms where a larger version of you was needed. And you told yourself it was situational, contextual, appropriate. It was the cage. The power reframe. The moment you fully detach your internal valuation from external response, you become capable of something that very few people in your environment are capable of. You become capable of being right even when no one agrees with you. You become capable of holding your position under social pressure. You become capable of making decisions that are correct instead of decisions that are popular. That capacity, to think and act independently of social weather, is rarer than talent. It is rarer than intelligence. It is the thing that separates the man who shapes his environment from the man who is shaped by it. Say it with me. I do not need their permission. I do not need their validation. I move. Number 4. Loneliness is a weapon they use against you, and you load it yourself. The fear of being alone is one of the most effectively weaponized fears in human psychology, because it is primal, because it operates beneath rational processing, because it will override logic, override strategy, override self-respect, override everything, when it activates at full intensity. And people know this about you. They don't have to be conscious of it. It is an instinct that humans have developed across thousands of years of social interaction. They know that if they create enough distance, if they manufacture enough uncertainty, if they signal enough scarcity around themselves, your fear of abandonment will do the rest of the work. You will chase. You will accommodate. You will compress yourself into whatever shape seems most likely to make them stay. And the entire time, you will be experiencing this as love or loyalty or devotion. Because it feels like those things from the inside. It is not those things. It is a biological panic response being exploited by the social architecture of need and reward. Weak men build their entire identities around not being alone. They make decisions about who to stay with, who to trust, who to tolerate, based primarily on the terror of the alternative. This is not relationship. This is hostage negotiation with yourself as both the hostage and the hostage taker. The power reframe. You must make peace with your own company at a level that is absolute and uncompromising. Not as a temporary strategy. Not as a phase you go through to become more attractive. As a permanent condition of who you are. When you are genuinely comfortable being alone, truly comfortable, not performing comfort while internally counting the minutes, the entire game changes. You stop making decisions from scarcity. You stop tolerating what you should not tolerate. You stop confusing presence for value. The person who is at peace alone is the most dangerous person in any social dynamic, because they can always leave. And everyone knows it. If this is landing, subscribe to Dominion Protocol. This is where the real architecture gets built. Number 5. Every time you ask for reassurance, you confirm their dominance over you. This one is precise. Pay attention. You ask for reassurance because you feel uncertain. That is understandable. Uncertainty is uncomfortable, and reassurance reduces the discomfort temporarily. The problem is the structure of what that exchange creates. When you ask someone to confirm your value, your decision, your direction, your worth, you are establishing them as the authority on the subject. You are placing them above you in the hierarchy of your own life. And hierarchies are self-reinforcing. The more you establish them as the authority, the more they function as the authority, the more you require their authority to feel stable. This is how dependency compounds. It does not stay flat. It accelerates. The more reassurance you seek, the more you need. The more you need, the less certain of yourself you become. The less certain you are, the more you seek. It is a perfect mechanism for the erosion of autonomous selfhood. And the person providing the reassurance, they may not even want this power. They may be generous with their reassurance, happy to give it. But the dynamic is still there. You have made them structurally necessary to your psychological functioning, and now every future conflict, every tension, every moment they are unavailable, it destabilizes you at a foundational level. The power reframe. You develop internal authority. You build the capacity to evaluate your own decisions, to trust your own reading of situations, to hold your own frame under pressure without requiring external support to keep it standing. This is not arrogance. Arrogance is need performing as confidence. This is actual self-governance, the ability to be your own final word on the things that matter. It takes time. It takes deliberate practice. It takes putting yourself in situations where the reassurance is unavailable and learning to move anyway. But the man who builds this, he is not movable. He is not manipulable. His center of gravity is internal, and it cannot be shifted from the outside. Number 6. The greatest power is the power to walk away and mean it. Not to threaten to walk away. Not to perform walking away as a negotiation tactic. To actually, genuinely, irrevocably be prepared to remove yourself from any situation that violates your standards, and to do it without drama, without explanation, without the need for the other party to understand or agree or validate the decision. Most people cannot do this. Not because they lack courage in the conventional sense. Because their need is too high. Because the cost of walking away, the social cost, the emotional cost, the cost to their self-image as someone who holds things together, feels too steep. So they stay. They adjust. They rationalize. They compress their standards until they fit inside the tolerance of whoever or whatever they cannot afford to lose. They call it loyalty. They call it maturity. What it is a cage with comfortable furniture. The man who can walk away from money when his integrity demands it, he cannot be bought. The man who can walk away from a relationship when his self-respect requires it, he cannot be domesticated. The man who can walk away from an opportunity that compromises his strategic position, he cannot be outmaneuvered. Because the leverage only works if you cannot afford to lose what they're offering. Remove the need. Remove the leverage. It is that precise and that simple. Train yourself to walk away from small things first. Build the muscle. Build the proof that the walk is survivable. Because it is always survivable. Every single thing you believed you could not live without, you have survived losing some version of it already. You are still here. The catastrophe your nervous system predicts never arrives in the form it promises. Walk. Survive. Know that you survived. That knowledge compounds into something that cannot be manufactured any other way. We are near the end now. And this is where it gets real. The person who watched the beginning of this video, they still exist right now. But only barely. Because what you've moved through in the last several minutes is not information. Information you can forget. What you've moved through is a shift in how you see the entire structure of your social world, your emotional life, your operating framework. And the version of you that needed people the way you needed them, that version cannot continue. Not because needing people is evil. Not because connection is an illusion. But because the unexamined need, the unconscious dependency, the invisible hunger that drove your decisions without your awareness, that mechanism has been exposed. And you cannot unknow what you now know about yourself. That version of you must die. Not metaphorically. Not poetically. Functionally. The man who reached for approval without noticing. The man who tolerated violations of his own standards because he feared the silence that would follow if he didn't. The man who called need love and called dependency devotion and called loneliness aversion loyalty. That man is obsolete. You execute the weakness. You do not negotiate with it. You do not try to manage it or reduce it slowly or keep a small amount of it around for comfort. You identify it, you name it, you make the decision that you are no longer that, and then you build the replacement from the inside out, every single day, in every single interaction. This is not dramatic. Drama is for people who are still performing their transformation. This is quiet. This is the quiet decision made alone, without an audience, without validation, without needing anyone to witness the change for it to be real. You stop asking for permission. From anyone. For anything that is yours to decide. You stop seeking the confirmation that you are on the right path. You walk the path. The results confirm it. Or they don't, and you adjust. But the adjustment comes from your own reading, your own analysis, your own authority over your own direction. You stop handing weapons to people and calling it trust. You build relationships with open eyes, with generous hearts, and with a strategic clarity about what you are building and why and with whom and on what terms. The old version is gone. What remains is this. You are not a person who needs to be completed by external sources. You are not a variable in someone else's equation. You are not a man whose stability depends on the weather of other people's moods, attention, or approval. You are the source. You are the one who decides the terms. You are the one who chooses, who remains, who leaves, who builds, who walks. Not from coldness. From power. Not from disconnection. From wholeness. Machiavelli understood that the prince who ruled from need would be ruled by whoever could provide or withhold what he needed. The prince who ruled from surplus, from genuine internal abundance, could not be controlled, could not be threatened, could not be moved by the manufactured scarcity that others use as leverage. You are building that surplus. Right now. In this moment. In the decision to see yourself clearly and to demand more from yourself than comfort and approval and the soft sedation of dependency. The weak need people to survive. The strong choose people because they are worth choosing. You have made your choice. Comment. I move in silence. I move in power. I move.